Welcome, everybody, to the Dreambuildrs podcast. I am super excited for the upcoming interview because in every episode, we go into conversations with purpose driven entrepreneurs and creators who have this fascinating life stories and also inspirational ideas about building this more purposeful world. And today, I'm especially honored to give voice to this change maker. Today, our guest is Christoffer Weiss. Now, Christoffer is a unique performance coach with a solid background in acting and event production. He has worked with some of the best speakers in the world, supercharging presentations and creating impeccable experiences for audiences. And the reason why I'm excited to talk to Christoffer is because he knows the ins and outs about public speaking, and he also knows how to create presentations that actually engage and inspire. So I can't wait to learn from him. Christoffer, welcome to the Dreambuildrs podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm happy we finally got this interview together, because last time we were going to do this, you had a change in your family, right? You got a little new one like the next day.
Yeah, it was scheduled on the exact same day that I actually got a baby boy. So we had to reschedule it, and
it was a very good reason for rescheduling. I wasn't offended at all. I'm really happy that we have the time now, and I hope your little one is okay.
Yeah, my little guy is super cool. He's doing super fine, and I'm really enjoying this new lifestyle. I think it's absolutely amazing. And I remember
that you has already created a free lifestyle for himself.
Sorry, Christoffer.
He has already created a free lifestyle, and he's already building his dreams.
Almost, because he has this innate curiosity. So I'm not sure if he can already dream, but I'm sure that he is curious and that he's looking forward to create whatever he wants. Yeah. Christoffer, let's start with you. Before we talk about public speaking and what we can learn there, and I would love to know what you actually did before. And last time that we spoke, you actually told me that your dream was actually, when you were little, was to become an actor, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that journey there? I would love to know more about that.
Well, I have my first recollection of wanting to perform when I was like 5 years old, and I became like the entertainer of the family. So whenever we had some people visiting, I was always telling jokes, or I was, trying to, be visible, because I was always wanted to be visible. And I don't know really what the reason, the exact reason for that, but we had some changes in our family, some divorces, stuff like that when I was a young kid. So that maybe had a reason that I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be heard. And I found the way of performing for our guests. And when I was in school, even in kindergarten, we had a rock band. We had a cover rock band when I was like 6 years old. We were playing like Wasp music, like I was the guitarist and bass player and did everything. We had a drummer and we had a singer. We did performances for all of the other kids, and actually we have pictures of that where we were performing. So it was from a very young age, always had this energy and this urge to be seen and be heard and to do something. And then in schools, I was always in the productions, I was the MC for like the parties, for the school parties. And I remember I was telling like half dirty jokes, and all of the teachers were just like, but it was my show, so I could do whatever I want. And the higher ups, they were always liking like, oh, it's so nice that somebody's like, oh, wanting to tell stories. And it wasn't until I was I think I was on 6th grade, so I must have been like 12, and we were writing these stories. We had these assignments in like our first language class, which my first language is Swedish. So we had these assignments where you should write something about a picture. So we had these pictures in a box, and you picked one randomly, and then you had to write about that. We call it like free writing. Mm-hmm. And my handwriting was really that good at that time, and it still really isn't. I don't really enjoy writing by hand. I have other talents instead, but that's not one of them. And then my picture that I got was a kind of a movie production. And I got so inspired to write about movie productions, because I used to watch a lot of TV. I used to watch movies. Fortunately, I had a stepfather who was limiting my time of watching. I could watch 1 hour per day. in addition to what we watched as a family. You know, we watched something together, that was okay. But in addition to that, which was really good looking back at it, because if I would have just been able to watch as much as I wanted, I would have just basically watched TV all the time. Well, at that time, this was like 85, 86, something like that. We had 2 channels. So we had like number 1 and number 2. We got some more later. So I'm really, really happy in one way that I wasn't brought up in this day and age, because I would be completely just like all the time using, I'm still now as an adult, I'm pretty much on the computer all day long anyway, but usually I do some kind of productive work. Yeah. It's a tool and it's a social thing as well. So it's not just entertainment. Absolutely. But I got really inspired to write about this movie production, and my teacher responded to it in a way saying like, I noticed that usually you write just like 1 page, and now you wrote like 18 pages. So like, you must be interested in this subject. And I've seen you performing and I've seen you doing all these things. How about if you would go to like a amateur theater group and actually perform? And I couldn't go that year. This was like 91. So I turned 13 that year, and I couldn't get in, but I could get to like a smaller production the same year. Because actually the town where I'm from, where I'm actually now as well, I moved back to my home country and hometown after many, many years out in the world. We have one of the largest summer theaters in Finland. It has 1,200 seats and a huge stage in front of a medieval castle. And they've been doing summer productions there since the 60s. Oh, wow. And it's very familiar, very famous here in this part of the world. And so I got in there the next year from 92. And once I got on stage and I had people in the audience and people were applauding, there was no turning back. That was like, this is it. I'm going to be an actor. There's no other way. I was so tired of school already then, going into like 7th grade, that when I got out of 9th grade, I knew that there was no way I'm going to sit for 3 more years in like a high school. I knew I had to get out. And I knew that I wanted to become an actor. And the only place where I could study as to a professional actor in Finland was the Theatre Academy in Helsinki. And I knew that, or figured out that I don't have to be a high school student. I don't have to get the hat, you know, that everybody goes to. Not everybody, but a lot of people goes to, and it's kind of expected if you want to study at an academical level later. I knew that that to be an actor, you don't have to be a high school student. So I started studying music, and then I started studying theater at a lower level for a couple of years, and then I got into the Theatre Academy, and this was in 1997, so I was 19.
Wow. What I like about you is that you just, you know, followed your passion even at that young age, because there's not many people that, you know, just say, oh, I'm just going for it and do that, you know. I was always surrounded by people who were always just staying stuck at high school and really wanted to do that just for having a career or so, right? And enter a good university. So I'm happy to hear that you actually did that. Yeah.
I'm also really happy that I was supported by my family, but they never really inhibited me from doing what I wanted. You know, they always supported me, which I'm really, really happy for. And everybody was really grateful that I was doing what I was doing, even though they were like, maybe you should look into other stuff as well. So now, you know, looking back, I actually had this conversation with my family some years ago that I'm actually have been combining the computer work and the creative work in like a fusion that I call audiovisual alchemy.
So what made you change that direction?
Last word.
From being an actor to going to event production and personal development? Was that change, that epiphany moment, right?
There was a few defining moments. So when I still was in the Theatre Academy, well, it wasn't really just like from going to A to B to C all the way to the end. I actually had to stop studying after the first semester because I was away quite a lot after I got into the academy. We had some personal problems, you know, we had another divorce, we had some issues, you know, here and there. And I moved away from home for the first time, you know, living by myself in Helsinki. And there was a lot of, you know, how should I say, distractions. And I was staying up at night, I was playing computer games, you know, I was, you know, doing all kinds of stuff in addition to studying. and I was actually way quite a lot. So they didn't approve one of my classes. And if you're not approved in one of your classes, you can't continue studying. So after the first semester, they basically told me like, you have to quit and come back in a year and a half, because the Swedish speaking school only accepts students in every second year. So that was, at that time, that was a huge failure. You know, in Finland, we say you come home with the milk train. So I came back with the milk train, and I was working here in a local shop for 6 months. And then I went to the army, because we have compulsory army in Finland. So, or you can get out of it if you want to, but it was also, for me, it was a matter of pride, because my grandfather was in the war and he got hurt really bad. So it wasn't really an option for me to say like, oh, I'm just gonna go to work at a children's home for 12 months, which is an option, or go to jail for 6 months, which is also an option. So I did my compulsory military service. And when I got back into the theater academy, it was with a different group. So I started with 2 different groups, which was kind of unique in a way. And the groups were totally different. The one that I went with first was very egotistical and very individualistic. And then the other group was like very, very, like, we're one unity. We're just like kumbaya and everybody's friends, and, you know, nobody's better than the other. So it was a kind of nice experience to see those two. And then what happened was that on a 3rd grade, we do like a practice period. So usually people go to a theater, or at that time, usually in Finland or anywhere in Scandinavia, to practice. And you get parts. Sometimes you get small parts, sometimes you get bigger parts, and you get to see professionals working. Well, in this theater that I was working since I was 13 or 14, I'd worked with professionals, and I worked in a professional environment. So I didn't feel it was so important for me to go 6 months away to some theater, because that was what I was going to do anyway for the rest of my life. That's what I thought at that time. So I took the chance and found schools all around the world in English, acting schools, because I really wanted, my biggest goal ever, my biggest dream, was to study or work in Hollywood. That was like the ultimate goal of everything. So by coincidence, the school that I chose out of all of the possibilities, I had very clear guidelines or things that I needed to be in place for me to choose that school. It needed to be in English. It needed to be somewhere where I could actually get into without going there for an audition first, because I couldn't travel to LA just to do an audition and come back, or then travel to London, you know. So I had to get in just by recommendations. So there was criteria that they had to follow, and also the price and the location. And the school that I went to, LACC in East Hollywood, was actually the best in every way. And I got my own schedule. I could work in my own schedule, and I was living my dream, basically. This was in 2001. I was 23 years old, and I got to live my ultimate dream. And for 6 months, I was in Hollywood. I was doing all of the cool stuff. I got to meet actors. I got to, you know, go to auditions. I got to see movie sets. I got to see all of that. And I realized at the end of that period that my dream, which was just like a child's dream of wanting to become an actor in Hollywood and wanting to win the Oscar, suddenly became reality. And suddenly I realized that I'm not as good as I need to be. My English is not as good. It's not as good as it is now. And I didn't have a working permit. So I realized that the dream suddenly became a reality, and the reality wasn't the same as the dream. So when I came back to Finland, my plan was to do my acting training here and then go back. Yeah. But in that period during in 2002, I just got really, really depressed, because everything just shifted from like the dream state into a reality state. And there were so many things that I realized that it wasn't all going to be fun and games, you know, which was the reason I got into it in the first place. I wanted to do acting because I love acting. I love the profession and I love that. I didn't like the business side. I didn't like, you know, all of the auditions and all of the selling myself. And I felt I wasn't enough. And I got, you know, huge self-conscious issues and self-doubts and stuff like that. And I was actually on the brink of killing myself, because I didn't feel like I wanted to live anymore. Like I felt I've lost everything and I hadn't found the next level where to go. There was nothing else. Like that was the highest level. At 23, I fulfilled all of my goals, and there was no goals after that. There was no dreams after that, except for the winning an Oscar, but it was felt too far. It felt too strange. So fortunately, somebody called me and said, we have a business opportunity for you. This was like in August of 2002, after like being really, really depressed. And they said, we have this job opportunity, this business opportunity for you. Come and listen. And it was a network marketing company. And I got into that company. And fortunately, I started going to events. I started reading books. I started, conversing with people on a totally different level. I started making plans. I started making, goals. And that's actually how I got to know Mikko, who's been a guest on your show as well. Actually, that's how I found out about you, because I saw Mikko's interview and I was like, I want to be on that. I want to be on that podcast because this is great. I love your interviewing style and I love what you're doing. So that was really kind of my savior in a way. So I can say that personal development literally saved my life, because that's how I got into the mindset and I got into the environment of self, building yourself and self-development and stuff like that. And a few years later, I remember, and this is kind of where the connection really happened, is I sat at UPW, which is Tony Robbins' event, with about 10 or 11,000 people in London. And he was talking about the triad, where it was just the base of all Tony Robbins training, where he says that if you change one thing, you change everything. So if you change your focus, if you change your language, or if you change your physiology, everything changes. Or one of them changes, all of them change. And I was looking at that and I was like, this is acting. This is what I've been doing my whole life. I kind of just like
big state.
Yeah, like big state, and it's like this is what I've been doing all my life anyway. But instead, and this has become a guiding principle in my training towards other people, where I train people in public speaking, is that instead of building a character on stage or for camera, you're just building the character of you, or the characters of you. So they're the same principle, but just for a different purpose. That was like the real big kind of like epiphany. And that's how I got into the speaking world. There was one, I have to mention, honorary mention, a legendary professional presenter, Les Brown, who I was listening to all the time on repeat. Like he has a interview, or it's a stage performance from like '86 or something like that.
Oh wow!
Where he talks about, you got to be hungry. That's his main thing. And I was listening to this over and over and over again. And in 2003, when working with this network marketing company, we went to Stockholm to a huge event, and Les Brown was the main speaker, the invited speaker, the keynote speaker. And even though I wasn't high up in the rank, a friend of mine, similar to Mikko, very in style, very similar, very friendly, very kind of inviting, he invited me to that event and to a VIP session with only like 200 of like the highest leaders in the company. And there was at that time, that company was going like really, really well. So there was a lot of people there, thousands and thousands of people. But in that VIP session, there was 200 leaders, and we sat in the front row. So I got a front row seat listening to Les Brown for like 90 minutes, just like bow, 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 like he was on fire. He was so good. And I was just like sitting in the front row, like a little kid, like, this is amazing. And at the end, he opened for questions. So I sat in the front row so I could ask the question. And I was like, Mr. Brown, you're this Mr. Motivation guy. Like, who do you get your motivation from? And he looks me straight in the eye and he lifts his hand up like this, because he's a preacher. And he shoves his hand towards my chest and he says, from God. And with that energy, with that, like, it just like pushed me back in the chair. And I was like, I want to have what he's having. Like, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to go. So that started the shift from an actor who is rehearsing and practicing and preparing to become a speaker, a presenter, a performer who is able to at any time go up on stage and deliver. And that's actually a choice that I made, a dream or a goal that I did. And that was one of the leading choices that's changed my life the most, is that I decided at that time that that's what I want to be able to do. I want to be able to, at any time I get a phone call, anytime I get an invitation, I can go up and I can deliver. I don't need to practice. I don't need to prepare. I can just trust that whatever needs to be said in that moment, will be said and that will come through. So it's less about me and more about you.
I love that, man. And I would love to touch upon that later as well as we get into the speaking part of us. And thanks for sharing that really fascinating story where you actually tell that you almost had your dream in Hollywood to coming back to Finland and going into the depression and having lots of these self-doubts and so on and almost about to finish your life. And I think it's incredible how you pulled yourself out from that situation by having an opportunity to become of a marketing, a business marketing company. And also being surrounded by personal development, things. So I think that's really, really cool. And I would love to know from that whole period of pulling yourself out from that situation, what is, let's say, the biggest lesson or, experience that you still carry with you today?
The sun is always shining, and the sun is us here, our heart, our soul, our essence is always there. Like now the sun is shining. It's actually cloudy now. So usually we say the sun isn't shining when it's cloudy, right? Or when it's dark, when it's night, the sun isn't shining. But the sun is shining at all times. Otherwise, in 8 minutes, we'd all be dead because it will be like 54 minus degrees here everywhere. And we'll just, we'll just freeze to death, which is like a normal Finnish winter. It's nothing out of the ordinary. But yeah, so the idea is that the sun is shining at all times. Our essence is radiating at all times. But what makes those clouds is our limiting thoughts. It's our limiting beliefs. It's our story we tell ourselves. It's the story that other people tell us. It's those ideas and thoughts and misconceptions we have about the world. So that started the journey, like in 2002, 2003, to kind of get rid of those clouds and to clean the mirror, to clean the glass in between, the binoculars. So then the stuff can shine through. Like, I'm not a religious man. I actually separated from church in 2004, and that's how I found God, because then I could find the God I want to believe in. And if we're speaking about God as a almighty creature or being or entity or essence, God can handle being looked at in many different ways. Religion is man-made, it's for men, it's for humanity. The Tao speaks about, what can be defined is not the Tao, because the Tao is only the thing that cannot be defined, because the Tao is everything. And I actually have to regress a little bit, because I need to tell this thing that when I was, I think like 5 or 6 years old, I started having this idea that what if nothing exists? And I was thinking this like all the time. This was like my entertainment, because back in the day, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have, solitaire, we didn't have Netflix. So we had to actually use our imagination. and I was thinking this thought over and over again. And especially when I couldn't sleep at night, I often couldn't sleep because I was so hyper energetic. I had so many thoughts. I was thinking over and over this thing that what if nothing exists? And I started removing, this was ongoing for years and years when I was a kid. And I always came to the idea that, or the thought that what if nothing exists? Like, what if my family doesn't exist? What if my school doesn't exist? Then it became like more abstract, like what if, the planet doesn't exist? What if, the universe doesn't exist? What if time doesn't exist? What if memories doesn't exist? And I tried to get to that place where like there's nothing. And I always came to the same conclusion, like there has to be something. And if there's something, there has to be everything. So in my view, God is everything, and God is, everywhere. And we can't define saying like, oh, this is from God. Everything is part of that. But obviously certain things have repercussions, certain things like karma, certain things are, so it's not like you can just kill a person and say, oh, this was God's will. No, there will be repercussions, but God is in everything, and God doesn't really, judge in that way, saying what is good or bad, but certain things, because good is good in one country and it's bad in another country. True, some things have been legal for a long time, which are bad, like war or like certain drugs, and then other drugs and other things have been illegal, even though they might be morally or ethically correct. But that's a whole huge conversation by itself. But that's kind of my guiding philosophy, that we have everything and we have the potential to be whatever we want to be. And the thing that is limiting us in its essence is our own limiting beliefs. And so to be able to kind of clear that out. And the reason why I went into the God part was that, you know, in Christianity, we talk about letting Jesus into your life, you know, and I think it's one way, but I look at it more, it's about letting Christ out from you, because Christ is there all the time anyways. Like, it's not like Jesus is knocking on the door, like, let me in. It's more like Christ, which is the essence of what Jesus as a man was talking about, the Christ consciousness, which is basically, I am that I am. I'm part of the universe. You know, we're all part of this. We're all the same. You know, we're all the same essence. And this is the shining light. So it's more about allowing, like opening the door, opening the heart, and opening your channels and allowing that to get out. And again, this is one of the guiding principles in my performance practice, in my performance training. It's about coming from that place of your essence and allowing that to shine, not just like being here in your mind center, but being present and being open and being available and allowing that essence, which we all are. You can't get away from it because it's you. That's what it is. The sun is shining all the time. It's just a matter of opening the blinds and clearing the pathway for it to shine through.
Thanks for saying that, man. I think it's absolutely critical that we, you know, live from our essence, and that we also open those gates and dams that we have built in to basically lock our potential, right? All these blocks that we build in. It's mostly our mind. So why don't we start living from our true potential and really do something with it? And then I also think it's important to see how we can actually live out our potential on stage, because many people, when they're on stage, they still have this, you know, stage fright or nerves and so on. And what I think is very cool about you is that you have this 360-degree view of, let's say, not only event production, you've been an audiovisual alchemist, as you call yourself, right? You've been
the world's premier audiovisual alchemist.
Now listen to that. And also, you give speaker training, and then you've been presenting. So you have this 360-degree view, which is quite rare in this world. So what do you think are the key ingredients for us to, let's say, be more authentic on stage? And be more free without being so much in the head and thinking what we're going to do, what is going to make us nervous. How can we be relaxed and operate from ease at stage?
Well, I think the main thing is that people are generally not afraid of the stage. There's nothing scary about the stage. You know, we talk about stage fright. You know, we're not stage frightened. We're fuck ups frightened. People are scared of messing up on stage. People are scared of messing up in front of an audience and what kind of repercussions that will have. You know, and it's part of, like, we have several layers of our brain, right, that has developed throughout the thousands of years that we've existed. And the logical brain, which handles like, oh, let's go out and talk about things, you know, blah, blah, blah. All of this part, especially in like the church and the academia, it's all about like stimulating the prefrontal cortex and being like intelligent and so on. But on in the deeper levels, there's the mammalian brain, there's the reptilian brain, which is all about like instinct. And being in front of an audience and being looked upon, first of all, is like dangerous. You know, our deeper minds, our deeper levels of our brain is like instinctively like, this is dangerous, because if something happens, if people are looking at me, right? So it takes like that social adjustment, those social conditionings and layering to even be comfortable being looked upon. So because a lot of people, like if you have one person, you've probably noticed it sometimes, where it's like the psychic staring, where somebody's staring at you and you feel it. And then you look back behind you and you see somebody staring at you. Well, the same, so there's some kind of energy moving from that person to you, because otherwise you wouldn't notice it, right? Like, what is that? And we can't really measure that yet, because we don't have the technology and we don't have the knowledge and the understanding of kind of interpreting that data, even if we're getting data from some kind of equipment. And this is always the problem with science. And I'm kind of like how should I say, like an amateur scientist. Like I love reading scientific papers, and especially now in these Corona times, I like reading how the PCR tests work and how the viruses work and stuff like that. I mean, I love that stuff. Well, I'm not a scientist, but I love reading them. So I have an understanding of how the scientific method works. And the scientific method is always based on the equipment we have to measure something. Like if you're not familiar with like Ignatius Semmelweis and Pasteur from like the 1700s, the Semmelweis said that that's partly why my name is Weiss, by the way, Semmelweis. That was a huge inspiration. It's not my original name. I actually changed it to Weiss, and that's one of my inspirators. He was like Tesla. He was like locked away at the end of his life because he was considered to be a moron, an idiot, because he was saying that there was these small particles that were transferring from like one body to another body when doctors were doing like abductions, or sorry, like the after your death, you're opening up like all of that stuff, and then they go and they deliver babies and they don't wash their hands in between. There's like stuff moving from like one patient to another patient, and he couldn't prove it because the technology wasn't available. So, and then a few years later, you know, the story is interesting. Semmelweis, Ignaz Semmelweis, if you want to read up on it. Pasteur came in and he said like, oh, there are these things called bacteria and, you know, microbes, and here we have the equipment to measure it. So that's kind of like a guiding principle, again, for me, from a scientific point of view, that we can't measure everything. Because if we're stuck with this, you know, with this logic, mathematical intelligence, which is measurable by Mensa, you know, it's all about making studies and laboratories and things like that. But there are other forms of intelligences as well, like at least 9, maybe even more intelligences. And other cultures put more value in those. Like I've studied significantly in like the Hindu culture and the Tao culture and the Buddhist culture. They have other sorts of intelligences, but our Western mind is very logic, mathematical. So if you look at like the people that are, if somebody's staring at you, we can't measure that right now, but there's some kind of energy moving from one person to another person when we are observing.
Yeah.
And if you take that and multiply it by 10 or 100 or 1,000 people, there's a lot of energy, right? There's a lot of energy coming to you, and that's scary. Like for our reptilian and mammalian brains, like no, you gotta run away. Don't put yourself in that situation. So that's one part. Like it's ingrained in us to avoid public situations where we are being observed.
Yes.
And then if you put the other part on it, which I think is maybe even more kind of relevant and valuable, is that people are not afraid of the performance part, but we are afraid of messing up. Because what happens if we mess up? People laugh at us, people don't buy from us, people think we're crazy, blah, blah, blah. And worst case scenario is that we are shunned away, because we are still like, in our essence, we are tribal beings, and we need each other. Even if we, in this day and age, we can survive a little bit more by ourselves, we're still tribal beings. So we need each other. So something deep inside of us tells us if we mess up publicly, we will be shamed and we will be thrown out of the tribe. And then we can't procreate and we can't live and we can't survive and we will die. Especially in a country like Finland, where people are even more afraid of public speaking, is that if you get shut out of the tribe on a winter day, you'll die. There's nowhere, you can't survive by yourself. So there's these layers where we actually think and feel that if I mess up, then I will die. So then a normal person would say like, there's no way I'm gonna go in front of an audience. So in my training, where I teach people how to battle stage fright, and there's tons of these other variants where, you know, you probably heard it, that if you are afraid of your audience, then you should imagine they're naked, right? You probably heard this, that you should imagine your audience naked, which I think is a good idea. It's stupid advice. I'm the performance coach for the Miss Finland pageant, so I'm working with the finalists. I've been working all this spring with the finalists and the semi-finalists and now the finalists.
Oh, wow.
And I'm actually going on a 5-day journey with them, you know, in a couple of weeks. So if you want to feel a little bit, you know, give me some support, then I would appreciate that. No, they're lovely, lovely, lovely individuals, really, really beautiful women on the outside and inside, really amazing opportunity to work with. So I take that work very, very seriously. And because I was talking to them about the same thing, and I asked them, like, what would you think? How would you like it if somebody would imagine you naked? And I could instantly see everybody was just like, I said, yes, exactly. You don't want that. You don't want people in the audience to think that you're imagining them naked. That would be stupid. You don't want to put yourself on a higher pedestal. You want to be like friends. Like, it's like, I'm talking to you now, you know, we barely know each other. We've talked a few times, you know, but I like you. It's nice to talk to you. So that is the mentality that I want to put out there, that you should have when you go on stage, that you're going to speak with friends or two friends, and that you're talking about things that matter to you. And then the third, probably most important thing that I got back in the day from one of my performance coaches, because I have several, is that it's not about you. It's about your message. It's about for you to be a conduit. It's about you to be a spotlight, not the spotlight coming towards you, but to change that and the spotlight going out there. You are not really important. Oh, wow. You know, I'm not really important right now. The people that are watching this is important. But this is also, for me as well, has been a huge, long ego journey to get rid of, you know, it's all about me, you know, watch me. I'm so, you know, I'm so good, you know, I'm so amazing. Look at how I'm doing stuff and how intelligent I am. Sure, you can be proud of yourself. I'm super proud of what I have and what I've accomplished and who I am as a person. But it's not really about that. It's really about delivering the message to the people. So when you are speaking with people that you enjoy and you like, that and that like you, you know, because you can always assume that the people that are watching you like you, or you can assume that they're not liking you. So why not choose, you know, the people liking you? Because it's all in your mind anyway.
Exactly.
And if somebody is like, because always in an audience is going to be people who enjoy what you're saying. There's always going to be people who don't enjoy what you're going to say. And instead of focusing on the people that don't like what you're going to say, find your allies. Find the people in your audience that are like listening to you, and focus on them, and then spread that out instead of allowing the dream busters to bust your dreams, like Les Brown always says. You know, don't allow those people to take you down, but allow the people that enjoy you pick you up. And, you know, speak about things that you actually know about and understand. And if you don't know about it, you know, put yourself in the place. I'm not saying that it came instantly. Like, I fucked up a lot on stage, like huge opportunities that I've actually messed up because I wasn't prepared or I was in my mind. But those are the things that you learn from, really how to be present. And then the third part, I hadn't learned it at that time yet, was to put away the focus from you on the stage or in front of a camera and give it back to the audience. Like I'm doing right now when I'm speaking. I'm focusing more on the people that I'm speaking to. Like I'm sending you, like I'm looking in the back of your head right now, everybody, or in the front of your head. I'm focusing my energy on you. And then I feel like stuff is just coming to me. Like I've been talking now for like, I don't know, 8 minutes straight. I didn't have any idea what I was going to say when he asked the question. I just allowed it to come through. And this is how we speak naturally, right? When you're speaking with your friends, you know, somebody asks like, how are you doing? Like, what have you seen something nice lately? You just allow this stuff to flow through, and not like reading a script in your mind from like row to row. And this is the issue that most people have with presentations and with public speaking, is that we write speeches in our head and then we're reading them out loud.
Thank you for saying that, Christoffer. I think that's really cool that we have to be more, you know, present on stage. And what I think is interesting is that we have to change that spotlight, as you just mentioned it, right, to the other side of the room. But I think that it's easier said than done. So what would be, let's say, one tip to do that when you are on stage, regardless of that is whether you're talking to, let's say, a friend, or whether you're talking to 10, 20 or 100 people or even more? How do you do that? What is something we can do to change that perspective of us and take the pressure away, let's say?
Yeah, I think one really good tip is to divide the audience into smaller chunks, even to divide into one person. And for example, Les Brown does this. He's a master at this. So you can see if you look at some, especially now when he's a little bit older and he doesn't walk around like a lion anymore. You know, he's very more controlled. So he directs his energy to one person, and then he speaks one thing to that person. And then he directs the conversation or the energy to another person and speaks to that person. So you can divide your energy instead of speaking to somebody like a whole. It's like a sea of people, and like, oh, who am I going to talk to? You just direct your energy. Like right now, I'm just looking into the lens. I'm just looking at you. I'm focusing my energy. And then I don't want to speak to this now. I have to, because it would be silly if I would be speaking like this. But in a live situation, then you direct your energy to one person or one segment of people, and then I do it to the next person. So instead of experiencing everybody as a whole, as a mass of people, I'm doing like chunks of people, and that kind of takes down that, because most people are scared of big crowds, and I actually have to say that bigger crowds are usually easier than smaller crowds. You know, just speaking to one person at a time can be much more intimidating than speaking to 10,000 once you get kind of used to it. But you know, I've developed this program. I started out with the actual how to create the perfect presentation, and my brand on this part is called Professional Presenter, and I also teach. I have online trainings on how to be a professional presenter. So how to understand, you know, the clickers and the PowerPoints and all of that kind of technical stuff. But my newest formulation in this is how to be charismatic and how to be present on stage or in front of a camera. And one of those segments in that teaching is how to prepare, because it's all about preparing. And if there are like short-term preparations that you do, you know, to make sure that you eat well, sleep well, drink well, breathe, you know, that you're wearing comfortable shoes, comfortable clothes. So you're comfortable. Like it's stupid to go on a stage and be uncomfortable, right? Because you need to sometimes you need to dress up, right? But there are options. Like I have dress shoes that are really nice dress shoes, but they're comfortable. I chose them specifically because they're comfortable. When I go on stage, I always ask, like, what's the dress code? You know, and I'm wearing clothes that I'm comfortable with. I make sure I drink enough. I make sure that I do my yoga, my breathing, and my meditation and that stuff, that I sleep well, that I eat well. I usually actually didn't eat now before this conversation because I didn't want to be sluggish and tired.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then there are longer term things that you can do to help get down the stage fright, and that's like I like to say that you become a good speaker by becoming a good person. So work on yourself, know thyself, work on your own limitations and all of your internal stuff. And this Corona period has been really good and challenging in many ways for a lot of people, because many people have been faced with their issues, because we've been like in this like busy, like performing, do all that stuff, and then suddenly it's like, oh shit, like I have all of these issues that I need to resolve. And that's really good. It's tough work, but I think that's the primary thing that we should as people be working with, especially if we are public, if we are in front of an audience, because even if your audience can't sense and exactly know what's wrong with you, they can sense it somehow. And if you're not like in line with yourself, your message will kind of, you know, it's like warming up your house and having the door open, or trying to light a candle and having the window open. You know, you're doing a lot of excess work. So when you're balanced and when you're in alignment with yourself and you're healing your childhood wounds and, you know, your breakups, you're forgiving yourself and all of the people and so on. So it's really about becoming a good person and in alignment with yourself, allowing for you to be who you are again, so your essence can flow through much more freely.
Yes, absolutely. and that's what it's about. It's about authenticity and how you can express that creative energy that you have inside of you, and how you can actually get that out to the other side of the room. And I would love to know from all the tips that you just gave. You mentioned a couple of very interesting ones. You have been working together with some amazing top speakers, right? From Brendon Burchard. I think you also work with Joseph McClendon, right? Who's working close with Tony Robbins and so on.
Yeah.
What is, let's say, the single best advice that you ever got from one of them in terms of speaking on stage or stage presentation?
Oh, there's so many.
It's just one, man. It's just one.
Let me see which one to choose. Yeah, the thing that comes to my mind is what Joseph said, and it's similar to what I said earlier. He just used a different terminology. He said that I'm getting all of this energy from you, so it is my responsibility to give it back to you. Like that is in essence a lot of these really great, the authentically good speakers, because there's a lot of bullshitters out there as well. There's a lot of people out there who just try to sell you stuff and just try to get you hooked on, you know, your stuff. And that is, again, it's somewhat tricky to kind of see which one is which. You know, I've bought products from people that turn out wasn't really that good because they lured me in with NLP and sales tricks and stuff like that. I've learned along the way to kind of separate those. But I would say that all of these really great speakers, they're really, like, even Tony Robbins, he's incredibly humble. I haven't worked with him personally. I've worked events with him and I've been on stage with him. But I worked with his son quite a lot, Jarek Robbins, who actually looks like Tony Robbins. Hi, Jarek, if you're watching, you're amazing. And you know, that's the same thing that I've learned, is that they're incredibly humble. And they're incredibly curious. And this is a place where I've had a lot of advantage of being an actor, because in my acting training, you know, I'm from the Stanislavski method, you know, it's all about being curious. It's really, really trying to understand what it is to be a human. So when you go out and start working on a character, like right now I'm doing a TV series where I'm playing a character who is into human trafficking. So he's a rich guy and he goes to another country with his wife to buy a child. You know, so I've kind of like, I thought about it for a long time before I accepted the role. Do I want to do this? And when I accepted, I was like, I need to look into this. Like, I need to motivate in my mind how this person would operate. And the same thing when you're teaching presentation skills, or you're teaching nutrition skills, there's a lot of empathy and a lot of humility that is needed. So I don't know if somebody exactly said this to me, but it's a kind of composition of everybody, is that I'm already getting all of that attention, you know, from the people, that they're giving me that. So yeah, it's kind of like what Joseph was saying, that the least I can do is to give them back the empathy and the understanding, and again, showing them the spotlight and bringing them out, because you know, you can get so far with being like this huge deal. You know, I work with enough famous people that I know how people respond to fame and recognition.
Yeah.
I got the fortune to hang out with one of my favorite actors ever, Woody Harrelson, a couple of years ago, because one of my clients knows him very well. We had a great time in London, and there's so many stories to tell about him as well. Huge, so humble, so amazingly like authentic and real as a person, and just kind of giving that attention that he's getting, you know, showing that to other people. And that's, again, one of the things why it's good to separate people in an audience into small groups, is because then you can give somebody your attention. And imagine how great that feels when somebody on stage, like a Jesus figure, looks at you and only you and speaks only to you. And this is what Tony does all the time. Like, one of the reasons he's so huge and so famous is that he takes the time, he goes into the audience, he touches people, he uses all of that energy and all of that production and focuses it as a laser beam And then it takes again away from him being him, and it's more about that person. It's not about you, it's about them.
Beautifully said, by the way. And I think an underlying theme that keeps on coming back is authenticity and who you can really be on stage, right? That you can truly be you, that you can impact people from there as well. And perhaps to wrap up as a last question is, what is the single best thing that you can do to, you said there was a lot of things about you prepare yourself as well to go on stage, but aside from preparation and meditation and drinking water and all these kind of things, what can you really do to be authentic? What can you really do to be you on stage, to shine, to get your talent out?
It's really about presence. In the end, it is about presence.
What is presence? What is it to be present?
Well, people ask me all the time where I live, especially when I was traveling a lot, and I was like, I live in the present. I live in the moment.
Yeah.
Between the past and the future, there's this spot there, because our mind wants to go in the future, wants to imagine things, and our mind wants to relive and remember things.
Yes.
The only place the mind cannot exist is in the present moment. But that's where the magic happens. In the present moment, where there's no mind, there's no judgment, there's no thinking. It's the flow state. So there are like different levels of brain waves, brain activity. You have beta, alpha, theta, delta. Delta is when you're asleep. Alpha is like our normal state. Beta is like high level. And then theta is like when you're just about to go to sleep or you're in deep meditation and so on. The sweet spot is between alpha and theta, and in the sports world we call this being in the flow, right? It's about being like present with what is happening on the outside. So you have all of the audience and you have everything that's going on. You have your clicker, you need to be aware of what's going on and how much time you have left and what are your subjects and all of that stuff like on the outside. And then at the same time you have an awareness. So presence is like awareness, right? It's being aware of what's going on the inside as well. And it's about balancing those two. Now, the planet also has a vibration that is measurable, right? And we call it the Schumann resonance, okay? That's the Schumann resonance is how the planet or flat disk or whatever form this planet is really, I don't know, I haven't been up to space. So it's like it's vibrating and it vibrates on similar frequencies as our mind. And one really kind of fun way to look at it is that the sweet spot, the Schumann resonance is about, it used to be, it's changed a little bit now. It used to be 7.8 hertz for a long time. And that is the sweet spot between alpha and theta. So you could say that the sweet spot, your kind of place where you are in the flow is when you are vibrating at the same frequency as the planet.
In the moment.
So, hold on, just 1 second. Okay, so when you are vibrating, you hear one sound. If this one would be vibrating a little bit faster, it would be like, right? So when you're doing this, they're vibrating the same way. So when you are in the vibe of the planet, of the people in the room. So yeah, it's not a simple thing just to vibrate with the world, but that is the ultimate thing. And how you get there is with presence, is with awareness. And the single most important thing is what happens all day long, all night long, is your breath. Like you have to go back to your breath. In yoga, you do asanas, you do the movements so you can breathe. So you can have like, that's why when you do like yoga practice, you have like different breaths. You breathe in, you breathe out. So the same thing, become aware of your breath. Anytime you're in your head, anytime you're afraid, breath, coming back, becoming aware that you're breathing, you're living. Because what happens when you're scared and when you're frightened? Yeah, you stop breathing, right? You stop breathing here. And this is the same thing Tony does with, make your move, do your peak state, all of that is to breathe. But you don't have to do all of that because you can't always do that because you look like a fool in certain situations. But you can always take a breath and you can always kind of. And what happens when you go over something that you've been in a panic situation, you have stress all day. What happens? People always take a deep breath. So it is as simple as that. It's too simple, but it is that simple, and that is the solution.
So breathing, also when you get on stage, keep breathing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like your countryman Wim Hof likes to say,
yeah.
Breathe, motherfucker, breathe.
Christoffer, thank you so much for sharing all that energy in here. I think we have experienced a lot of energy in this conversation, and thank you for bringing that out here. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed your stories, but more often the message behind the stories is very cool, and I'd like very much to talk with you about how we can be better speakers and better presenters, and it all boils down to be yourself on stage. And I think that's the most important.
Yeah, and I just want to finalize one thing, that there is not one sort of speaker which is the good. Like, I'm like this. This is my natural state. You're different. Like, you have a different energy. So being authentic yourself is not replicating me or Tony Robbins or Joseph McClendon or Les Brown or Wim Hof or anybody. It's about being who you are and who you want to be. And that is so important.
That is absolutely crucial, because often we see these big speakers and we want to be like them and replicate that image on stage, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're being yourself.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for mentioning that. Thanks for your inspiration. And also, as a last thing to wrap up, perhaps it's really cool if, where can people get in contact with you if they want to know more about, about your trainings in public speaking and becoming a professional presenter? Where can they find Christoffer?
Professionalpresenter.net is my website for the online training. I'm still working on my social media profile on that part, but you can find me on Instagram or on Facebook through Professional Presenter. And then my personal Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and everything is the Christoffer Weiss, because there's a lot of Christoffer Weisses in the world, but there's only one, the Christoffer Weiss. So you can find me on that.
I'll make sure that I drop that in the comments below.
Thanks.
And thank you so much again for your time and for your energy, and for all the listeners. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye, and blessings to you and your family.
Yeah. Thanks.